Rather, they're worse than cattle. They're further astray than cattle. And cattle, there's nothing wrong with cows. They haven't fallen short of what they're supposed to do. Cows, at least they fulfill the roles that they've been given. They give their milk, they give their meat, they chew their cud. The things that they're supposed to do, to the extent that they can, they do them to the best of their ability. They're fine. These people, though, they had such potential, right? But they've wasted that potential, and by doing that, first of all, he says they're like cows. Then he says, no, actually, let me take that back. They're actually worse than cows. Ulaika humul ghafilun. These people are heedless, and they've put veils over all of their senses, so they can't perceive the truth anymore. The same thing happened in another verse. Surah Al-Anfal, there's two verses. One is verse 55, which says, "Inna sharra ad-dawabi 'inda Allah." Let's read the first part of the verse first. It says the worst animals, right? Dawab, dabba, means any sort of creature, but it's usually dabba means to walk. And so dawab and dabba is used for animals, right? As opposed to human beings. Four-legged animals and such. So it says the worst animals before Allah are, what would you expect? Cockroaches, or think of something that we think of the worst creature. And it says الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The worst animals before God are people who are kuffar. Again, like I said yesterday, it doesn't imply that every non-believer not every non-believer is included in these sorts of phrases in the Quran. When it's talking about the kuffar in these strong terms, it's talking about people who know the truth and have rejected it, or who have not answered the call of their own intellect. They've kind of blinded themselves to the truth. As opposed to people who are kuffar and are seeking the truth, are open to the truth, and when you present the truth to them, or when they finally find the truth and they say, yes, this is what I've been looking for all along. Right? Those kind of kuffar are not being talked about by these sorts of verses. Right? So the worst animals before God are those who are kuffar, who reject the faith and never believe. A similar verse in 8:22, it says, "Inna sharra ad-dawabi 'inda Allah as-summu al-bukmu alladhina la ya'qilun." Again, the worst animals before God are people who are deaf and dumb. I mean, they're deaf to the truth. They're dumb in accepting the truth. They can't get themselves to say and admit that you're right. Yes, this is the truth. Another verse in Surah Al-Furqan also talks about them being like cattle. Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse 44. أَمْ تَحْسَبُ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ أَوْ يَعْقِلُونَ إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. It's speaking to the Prophet and almost like consoling him. And the Prophet used to kind of kill himself because people were so hard-headed. He always felt like, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not doing enough. If I can only talk to them one more time and tell them one more thing, maybe they'll believe. And so Allah is constantly trying to console him and say, no, all you have to do is just you tell them the truth, and that's all you have to do. Whether or not they accept, that's up to them. So he asked the Prophet rhetorically, he says, do you think that these people will hear, or even if they hear, do you think that they'll think? Right, there's kind of two veils that the kuffar had, whom the Prophet was facing. One was that they wouldn't listen. Sometimes, literally, there's stories of where they would advise one another to put cotton in their ears. They wouldn't hear the Quran because somehow the Quran, they were afraid would cast a spell on you. Right, so literally, they'd put their finger or cotton balls in their ears. He says, do you think that these people are going to hear you? And even if they do hear you, do you think they're going to think, use their minds to contemplate on what you're telling them? إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ. These people are nothing but cows. They're nothing but cattle. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. Rather, they're worse off than cattle. Alright, so this is... these are verses that are tapping into this desire, making use of this desire that we have within ourselves to be above animals, to assert our humanity. The Quran uses that desire that we have within us and says, if you don't establish this relationship with God, if you don't believe in God and contemplate God, then you voluntarily bring yourself down to the level of cattle, rather worse off than them. Another way this desire for honor and dignity plays out is that we naturally want to associate with people who are higher than us, who we perceive to be better than us. When I give you examples, I think it'll become clear that yes, human beings all have this sort of desire. One of the ways that we feel like we can gain honor is by associating ourselves with famous people, important people. Right? If you think of how I've had this experience myself. Think if you've ever seen anyone famous. Maybe here you see a king, or you see someone who's famous, or some sort of a star. You might have just the slightest encounter with a person. You see him from a distance, or you see his, I was told on the way here that license plates kind of indicate who's driving the car. So you just see the license plate, and you're like, oh, I saw so-and-so, I saw his license plate. And it becomes almost like a point of pride for you. You might actually tell somebody that, I saw such and such. I remember one time when I was in college, Bennett and Bhutto had come to my university. And of course, I wasn't invited. She was there on official business. But as her limousine was driving up, my roommate and I went over to, just to kind of be gawkers like the rest of the campus was. And when we were standing there, as she got out of the car, she kind of looked in my direction. And I felt so important. Like, somehow I was important now because, this famous person had looked at me. And we have this kind of feeling that somehow being associated with famous or important people somehow gives us importance as well. It's one of the ways we feel like we get dignity. So that's these kind of mundane examples of gawking at stars and getting an autograph from somebody, or sitting in the same seat that somebody must have sat in a past generation. Right? Those kinds of things that we do, they're basically ways that we're answering this natural desire, this natural call that we have within ourselves to gain dignity and have dignity by associating with someone who we perceive at least to be better than us, to have some sort of perfection. Again, the Quran taps into this desire that we have. It guides this desire. These examples that I'm talking about are kind of substitutes that we found for ourselves to satisfy this desire in a very mundane and silly sort of a way, almost childish way. But the Quran recognizes this desire that we have within ourselves, and it tries to use that to pull us towards God. If we're satisfied, if we're happy to be, have this association with just regular old people who happen to be famous, right? What about people who are truly righteous, and really incredible people, the prophets themselves? If we can have an association with them, be with them, see them, right? That's gonna give us true dignity, and it's also gonna satisfy this desire that we have within us. So the Quran uses this in the following verse. In Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 69, Allah says, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. He says that anyone who obeys God and His Messenger, and those people are going to be with, right, we're going to be accompanying those people whom God has blessed. And he lists 4 categories of people whom God has blessed. The prophets, Siddiqeen, which has various meanings. Siddiq could be people who are exquisitely truthful. It could be people who have kind of been the first to accept the prophethood of prophets and affirmed their prophethood. There are various meanings for what Siddiq could mean. Shuhada, right? Shuhada in the Quran, shaheed is always used for a witness in the Quran. It's never used for a martyr. So shuhada here most likely implies those individuals whom God has appointed as witnesses for the rest of people. Right, which include the prophets, but who are not limited to the prophets. The imams also, for instance, or other awliya of Allah, other kind of close friends of Allah who are chosen, they are witnesses over us. And I talked a little